I remember him telling me before my last final, he was just like, "You're either afraid or you're grateful." You can't be both. They're counterproductive. You can't be grateful and afraid, right? You're either grateful or you're afraid.
What's the most efficient path to victory against this particular opponent?
He's dropping off for the choke here. We could see the finish. It's looking tight. Tight at Alpra.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Everyday Jiu-Jitsu Podcast. I'm your host, Matt Kwan. The Everyday Jiu-Jitsu Podcast is everything you need to know about Jiu-Jitsu. And today I have with me very, very special guest, Mr. Junny Ocasio. Welcome to the show, Junny.
Thank you, guys. Thank you so much for having me on. I appreciate you.
Guys, before we get started, please like, share, subscribe, leave comments below. And if you want to support the show, you know where to do it. Check out the links in the bottom. Junny, it's awesome to have you on the show. Thank you so much for joining us. You're coming off of a huge win at No Gi Pans, and it's awesome to have somebody of your caliber on the show to talk to. How was the competition for you? How did everything go?
We won, so that was the overall goal. As far as I think this was a hard tournament. I think it was more like a mental tournament because I had just had Europeans about a week and a half before. So traveling, being in that championship mindset of a major, then coming back and then having to like barely have any time to like even think about like, oh, I won that tournament, and then going straight into the next one. I had to pretty much pretend that I didn't win that tournament. And I had to also have only like a day and a half of like unwinding, and then I had to get instantly back into camp because there was no time to waste. So considering everything, it went well. I'd say that I went into Pans my body was pretty tired. I was pretty tired, but I knew it was going to be hard from the beginning when I saw the dates, how close they were. But overall, it wasn't my most technical performance, but I'd say it definitely showed a grittier side of myself, like a very championship side of myself.
Nice. And for those who don't know, Junny is you're a world champ, a Euros champ. You have tons of accolades, and this is I saw a post where you were talking about how previously you've come up short in a lot of these big tournaments, and for years coming up short, and then finally you started getting your breakthroughs. You started winning these major titles. So when you go into these competitions and you have in the back of your mind how many times you've fallen short, do you think that helps you, or does that give you more motivation for the next event?
Lots of things have changed. But for sure, I get motivation going into the next one. I'm very competitive. I don't like to fail, but I'm no stranger to failing. I've had to fail throughout my entire life to get where I'm at. So I'd say that the competition mindset I have now is like, I don't walk around like I'm confident in my abilities. I'm confident in everything I've done. I actually got to remind myself how much I've done. But the biggest thing for me is like when I go into the competition is just to remember that like when I think about like nobody's invincible. Anyone can take a loss. And the minute you're like, I'm world champion, I'm just going to wax everybody. I feel like that's when you're going to lose. You know what I mean? Because, it's a different thing when you have them after you have those titles. Everyone's gunning for you, and like you have to remember how you were when you were gunning for those titles. And so like my mindset this year, especially going into these ones, knowing all this stuff, knowing how hard it was going to be, is that I anticipated that it was going to be 2 times as hard to redo everything. And so I'm not fighting like I'm a champion. I'm fighting like I'm a contender. So like I'm training like I'm a contender, and I really put that in my head. Like even right now, I just won 2 titles back to back, right? 5 major titles straight, okay? But in my brain, like none of that matters because like the next tournament isn't those tournaments, And so like that's the motivation I'm using, and just really want to hit my goals. I'm not thinking about failure that much these days of like me failing, because I feel like you kind of put that energy out into the world, and that probably might happen. And versus like, I'm going to put my energy into like doing my absolute best every day, and just hopefully I can find a way to win.
Awesome. Why do you compete? Why'd you get started in competition?
In the beginning, it was just like, I love fighting. I love how it feels. I don't think I've ever got a better high than fighting, for me personally. But in the beginning, if I'm being honest, like, I didn't have any other self-worth in the world, right? Especially how I grew up with a lot of negativity and all that stuff. So I established my self-worth with like, oh, I'm really good at this. And nobody really was nice to me, cool to me, or nobody stopped messing with me until I learned these skills, And so for a long time, it was very like, I love how it feels. It makes me feel, and I love pushing my abilities, and I love how pure it is. But also, I established my self-worth with it, which is a much different thing than it is now, right? The fact that I still compete and I separate that is a different thing. At this point, I love competing because, man, I just want to see how far I can push my limits. I want to see how good am I, and can I be the best or one of the best during the time frame I'm here. And so, like, that's super important to me. But for sure, competing gives me no better feeling than competing. There's nothing that's more pure. The nerves, the weight cutting, the preparation, the going out there, the being in the finals, and it's just nothing as beautiful as that. One day I'm not gonna be able to do it, so I'm gonna try to take everything I can with it.
That leads me to my next question, which is, how long do you plan on competing for?
Yeah, this keeps coming up like a while. Everyone's, and I get it because I'm not.
I get asked that question a lot too. Right? I think everyone who competes gets that question.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of the younger guys don't ever get that question. I feel like if they're 19, 20 years old, then they don't really like kind of get that question. For me, it's like, oh, Junie, how old are you? I'm gonna be 36. I was like, oh, okay, how long you still got? I think as long as my body can withstand it, and it's healthy and it can go. Because I'm probably the best right now that I've ever felt. Of course, you're gonna feel sore and stuff like this, but the way I take care of my body, how much I do, and how I feel, I don't feel like I've lost a step. I feel like I've gained steps. So you want to be logical about it. If I start to feel like that goes down, then we'll see. But I'd like to say that I have like, I'm about to be 36 in the year. I think I have like 2 to 3 really hard years in me if I want to, and then from there I can be very picky about if I come in and out. I do see myself being like one of those guys that take off, maybe like wind down, but then decide like, hey man, can I do it again? So I definitely feel like I'll be competing for a long time. Now the quantity of how I compete will be very different. I mean, even now the quantity has changed in the last 2 years. I used to have I used to compete every single weekend for so many years. Now it's like I've established myself enough to like, there's no reason to go out unless I absolutely want to, or I want to feel the hunger, or I want to go against the younger guys, or I'm in a championship. Like pretty much that's what it is. That's why I've only went like 5 times this year, And so like quality is more important to me right now, quality and what's good for my career, and also the most important thing is what makes me hungry. If the hunger leaves me, then I probably will stop fighting. Because when the hunger is there, when you see me in the pants, that's a hunger me, like that's like a real like me. If you see me sometimes, there's been like 1 or 2 times where I fought in like an open or ADCC open, and I just didn't want it. I didn't have it. I didn't need it. And like, it just like, I didn't perform well because I wasn't like hungry for it, so that's where I'm at with that stuff.
So are you an 88?
No.
You're 36 years old, you said?
No, I'm 66. I mean, 62 the kilogram.
No, sorry, not weight. Year that you were born, 1988.
1989.
89. Okay, yeah. So we're very similar age. I'm an 88. if you get to that point where, you feel like okay, I'm noticing now that my body, like the adult division is, it's difficult to hang with these like
Yeah.
19, 20-year olds, and you're noticing, you're feeling that. Are you thinking maybe about still competing, but jumping to masters divisions? Or are you just like, you know what, if I can't compete at the highest level in the adult division, then I'm just going to like,
Well,
stop competing?
this is a two-thing answer, because I'm not of the philosophy that, so I believe that, like, obviously you're fighting at the adult division, you're fighting against the very young kids, and it's very, very hard to win. But at this point, Masters 1 is very hard to win. You know what I mean? Like,
Definitely.
you have a lot of guys who are like my age who decided to flip over, and they're still at the top of their game. Master 1 is just as hard. So to say, in my mind, and I know it's a thing, but like people will be like, adult division, your age division. I have no preset on if you have to fight in your A division. It's not as important or important as adult division. Like, how hard it is to win at brown and black belt in any of the major tournaments at any age group. It's very hard, especially Master 1 and adult. Those are very, very hard to win. So I really like to state that out there, so that, like, especially when I talk to my students, I like want them to feel comfortable fighting their age group. If they want to fight their age group, that's fine. And I think it's just like your goal range, right? Like, what's your goal? Like, is your goal, do you feel like you just want to compete and have fun and go after a new title? Maybe I will. Maybe I will want to go after a master title, and just to conquer that, just to do it. But right now, or in the foreseeable future, I don't see myself doing it just yet. Maybe. I'm not sure. There may be moments where, like, maybe if they separated, like, some of the no gi majors and the masters, then I'd, like, do both. But I don't feel like, for me, my goal isn't that. My goal is to have that coveted title twice, 3 times. And then we'll see what happens. The goals change, There was a moment there that I might have even considered retiring a year ago, because I had hit my goals and I've been chasing them forever. And you hit them and you're like, holy shit, like, what now? Because whatever anybody says, whatever anybody does, I'll forever be a world champion, so
right.
You have to really be honest with yourself what happened. And I tell you this much: after I won the titles, I got depressed for like months. I kept training, I kept working on things, but man, I was depressed for months. I just got so down, and it really took me to reestablish like what my goals are. So now my goals are like a little bit higher, and you want to set your goals higher now. I learned this lesson than what you think you can achieve, so that you never achieve it. Right? Because, like, my goal now is to be the best athlete I can be and be a multiple time world champion, whether that be 2 or 3 times. And that's my biggest goal, right? Right now, my immediate goal is to win No Gi Worlds and repeat what I did. And that's already a really hard thing to do. And just make some history and break my own records. But if the day comes where I feel like maybe a Masters, maybe not, I don't know. But I've been doing this for a long, long time. And I don't know, I don't have a straight answer, but I can tell you that I probably have 3 really good long years in me where I can really go. And then we'll see. Right now I'm fighting at 32, 135, which is my main weight class. I'm pretty small for the other weight classes. But there's probably, if everything goes well and I'm able to hit what I want to hit, I mean, there's some opportunity to just kind of like jump up and have some fucking legend fights, that people want to see, and that I really don't care, that I have nothing to lose because I'm a smaller person in it anyway.
So you kind of already answered my next question, but I want to ask it again because I think it's an important one. Important for anyone who does this sport professionally, whether you're a coach or, you want to be a coach or you're a competitor, and that's, what is your end goal in the sport? Like, you'd already reached your goal by winning these titles, at the highest level. Now that you've reflected on that and you've went through that wave of, like, you mentioned depression, because you're like, okay, well, I've achieved my goal. So what direction do I take this? Like, what is your end goal for jiu-jitsu as in terms of like a career?
So, as a career, as far as so like my athletic career, my biggest thing for me in my athletic career, it's so funny. Like, like money doesn't drive me, followers don't drive me, the fame doesn't drive me, none of that. Like little recognition doesn't drive me. What really drives me is when I leave the sport. When somebody says my name, they'll be like, "Man, Junie, for the time he was here, he was one of the toughest guys in the world." Right? And that's so important to me, to know that like I have the respect of my peers, to be looked at like a real legend and somebody who like reached the top and was very hard to fight, and just that's important to me. Like, I look at some guys who like, I remember like the people who were really hard to fight during their time. You know what I mean? And so like for me, that's athletically, that's what it is. And my own goals for that in particular, aside like titles and stuff like that, is to be a multiple champion and have some fights. And hopefully ADCC opens up a smaller weight class and I'm able to really try to get that. And if not, then keep cementing myself as one of the best 135 pounders. And career wise, there's opportunity to open up a school, which I was almost really ready to do this year, but decided that it would take away from my athletic career. And this is a really peak moment for me. So like, I don't really want to sidetrack my career right now, but definitely open up a school, definitely passing off knowledge and, just trying to raise up the next generation and teach hobbyists and pros in a hybrid fashion where they all feel like they can get the best of their ability and kind of bring those worlds together a little bit more, versus just kind of like choosing one or the other. I want kind of like my own students to be gym monsters, even if they don't want to compete. And I want the people that want to compete to have people that they can count on to train and fight and do well. And, I have my own little plan for like opening up. Where I open up is still a little bit of a mystery. I'm not sure if I feel like staying in New York or moving somewhere else, but that's as far as those goals go, and then I have life goals that are like far exceed jiu-jitsu, like they're like, making sure we're super financially stable even more, right? And also making a business out of whatever I do, whether it be, aside from school, like, if it's influencer or if it's motivational speaking, stuff like that. Those are things that I'm interested in, especially the motivational speaking. I feel like I come from a place where I'm not like a prodigy, like I had to really work hard and I had a really rough life. And if we're talking about life, like I'm a champion at life, like versus just on the mat. Like I've been through some pretty horrific things in my life and, just would like to pass that on to other people who have been through the stuff I've been through and feel like they, want to commit suicide, and I want to be the reason why they don't.
Can you explain to me on fight day, like what's going through your mind? Like how do you like to mentally prepare yourself, the day of the competition, right before you step out on the mat? Sort of where's your mindset at? How do you deal with the nerves? How do you address those things?
Yeah. People will be like, "Yo, you got it down," or something like this. And I'll be like, I do well with my nerves because I went through a lot of mental work with performance coaches, and as well as regular mental work with some of my my friends that are work in that field. So I do well with nerves, but I always get nervous, man. I always get nervous. It's just if you don't get nervous, I feel like you don't care, and if you don't care, you're probably not going to do that well. Every single person I know gets some type of nerves if they really care. Especially when you prepare for a lot. Like some people say they prepare a lot and give everything up, but I promise you that I sacrifice every waking moment to this. This is all I do, like literally. And on top of like running my life, it consumes my life. So nerves come. For me personally, I have my own affirmations I spend every day. I was brought up pretty negative, so you got like 31, like almost 30 years before I really started really working on that aspect of my mental and how I talk to myself. And so for me, it's an everyday thing, like affirmations every day. I listen to there's affirmations for men on Spotify, and it's just like 5 minutes every morning. There's like just 5 minute little affirmations to brighten up your day, depending on what the subject is. I also listen to a lot of motivational speaking, Jordan Peterson, Eric Thomas, Les Brown, Tony Robbins. Those are my favorites to listen to. And a lot of people listen to music when they go get ready to fight. I don't. I listen to my own affirmations. So I'll write down my own affirmations and I'll just replay them in my head over and over again. I think music interferes with that part, and it kind of like makes me too jittery. I'll listen to a little bit maybe, and right before I go out, I'm for sure listening to my own affirmations. And then, I get a nice warm up in, and I personally, on the leading up to the fight week, I stop drilling, I stop studying, I stop everything, and I really trust in my jiu-jitsu, and I take all that stuff out, and I just kind of let my brain stop thinking about everything so it can be present in the training room. And usually when I do that, it doesn't matter what I do, I'm going to find a way to get what I want. It's just like if there's too much in my brain, it just hounds me. And so when I'm fighting, and especially when I'm competing, I need less thinking and more trust in my jiu-jitsu. Like I've been doing it every day for a long period of time. I train every day, situations every day, training every day. I just got to let loose and just like stop trying to control everything. Because I'm one of those people that me and you can train. I'll beat you up a bunch of times, right? But if you score on me once, or if you do one thing that messes with me, man, I get so upset. I'm like super like on it, and I'm like trying to figure that out already. So it's my greatest power, but it's also a negative when it comes to competition, because you can't overthink, because competition it's not going to be pretty, and unfortunately, like that, I love to be a technician, but like I remember being at Pans and being like, that was the worst fucking performance I've ever done. But at the end of the day, a champion finds a way to win, and you got to get it done even on the days you don't feel like doing it. So that's how I handle my stuff. For me, is just really internal dialogue and just really focusing on me and not even the opponent. Like just really focusing like my opportunity, my day. And I remember one of my mental coaches telling me, shout out to Mindset Mike. I remember him telling me before my last final, he was just like, you're either afraid or you're grateful. You can't be both. They're counterproductive. You can't be grateful and afraid, right? You're either grateful or you're afraid. So when I heard that, I was like, oh shit, no, I'm grateful. I'm here in the finals of the fucking, whatever championship. I'm super grateful. And whatever fear disappears, and I'm just in the moment.
Fascinating. How do you like to warm up? What do you like to do?
I have a 9 to 12 minute warm up. I like to just go all positions and just kind of briefly go over them. Just like, me being on top, me being on bottom, a little bit of wrestling, a little bit of double pull and jump squats and whatever in between. Get a nice sweat going, but not so much where like I'm dying, just like a very like half flow, and just get a nice sweat going. As soon as I get a sweat going, I just let it go and I go in. Usually if I have like too much time in between, I'll re-warm up. If it's like like usually in an IBJJF major, you get like an hour between, like about 40 minutes to an hour between your quarter and your semi. And so like if I warmed up for my quarter and I feel pretty good and it's like same day weighing and you're drinking water and stuff, I usually don't warm up again too much before the other one because I'm already warm. But then for the final, I get there early and I re-warm up. Yeah.
Do you care how you win?
Of course. I mean, I want to finish, I want to finish every time, like it's very hard for me to accept that I didn't finish in a fight. It's very hard for me to know that I could have done better in the fight. Very frustrating for me, especially when I train very hard, and like at Pans was like, I messed up on so many little things that I was a little less sharper than I was for Europeans. If you watch my energy for Europeans and my energy for Pans, it came out, but it came out after like I was clashing with people, and that's not to discredit my opponents. My opponents are fighting very well. They're all tough guys. For me, at the end of the day, I have to remember a champion finds a way to win, right? Like, and that's super important to remember, because people could complain about advantages, people could complain about the stuff, but like, you're in this rule set. If you studied the rule set to the T and you practice all those things, it shouldn't be an issue, right? A lot of people don't do that, and that's why they complain on those things, right? Minus, like, some gray area. But I would always rather finish, always. And I always pride myself on, I'm never stalling. Like, there's not one match you can really see me like, there may be 40 seconds on the clock. Maybe I'm controlling the fight, but I'm never running backwards. I'm never running away, turning my back. And as long as that stays the same, like that I'm fighting forward and I'm not afraid to fight wherever it goes, that's the most important thing to me. Because, like, you're not going to catch me running away half across the mat to run across over here. You're going to see me defend and go forward, defend and go forward, defend and go forward. And I think that that's sound across the board for my matches. I'm always trying to finish. I'm always trying to pass. I'm always trying to excite the crowd or excite the match itself. But the truth is at black belt level, at the really highest level, when you're in these matches with these really good guys, it's going to come down sometimes to like just an advantage, or who's pushing the pace, or who's not quitting. So, I'd like to say that I would finish every match, but unfortunately that's just not the way it is. But I like to say I finish more than I don't. And I like to say that nobody will ever be in a fight with me without trying to really work. Like, I don't think there's one person that can be like, oh man, I just ran through Junny. Like, that doesn't happen, right? Like, if I lose, I'm gonna go out on my shield.
Mm-hmm. Do you do the gi as well? I don't usually see you compete in the gi.
Yeah, I haven't competed in the gi since 2022. And I'll be brutally honest, the reason why I stopped competing in the gi, I've been competing in the gi forever, right? I've won a lot of things in the gi, maybe not majors, but I've been very consistent throughout the color belts and just always winning opens and stuff like this. But to be honest, I think there was a moment in 2022 Worlds. I went back, I fought, I won 2 opens, I went to go do Worlds. I was having a rough year because I was separating from my ex-fiance, and we knew each other for 17 years, and it was a very hard year. And on top of that, I was just dealing with a lot of things, moving, all these things. So I was fighting, but man, it was very hard to fight and stay focused. And I remember going into the 2022 Worlds, and I was winning the first round by, smoking the guy. And then all of a sudden, I just stopped fighting hard. And at the end of the tournament, I lost. I ended up losing by some bullshit. Like, I just gave up a takedown. I didn't even like fight it that hard. And I just remember telling myself and being very honest with myself and say, like, why did that happen? And it's just like, my heart wasn't in it. Like, my heart, I did not want to win more than that person. And even though I felt like I was more skilled and I could have pulled it through and everything was good, I just felt like I didn't want it enough. And after that, I was like, I don't want to compete in it if I don't want it. If I don't breathe and live it, I think it's a waste of time. Like, if I'm sitting there and I'm competing, I'm like going to competitions and I'm like, oh, I just want to compete because I kind of want to do it. It's not the right attitude for the professional level. Like, you can't kind of be into it. It's either all or nothing. And so for me, I keep my gi up and I train. I was very honest with my professor about it. Like, I'm still gonna train in it. I believe in being well versed, and so like I've been doing it my whole life. So it's kind of like shitty. Like, the first thing I like to do after I compete in a major or a tournament in no gi is I just do gi for like a couple days, because I just need a break from I want cloth and shit again. Also, my students are all high level in the gi, and I have to make sure that my gi stays if my no gi's at like a 10, 11, the gi has to stay at like at least an 8. It has to be at a high level that if a visitor came in the gi to fight and train, I wouldn't get my ass whipped at all. Like, it would be fine, right? And that's important for me. And I won't return to the gi unless I feel that I'm really, really into it. Like, that's not to say that I won't ever return. Just for right now, I don't see it happening. If I'm being honest with myself, like in my no gi endeavors, I am like in it. I'm locked in. For the gi stuff, I'm locked in a different way, but it's more for my students and for myself to make sure I have like the gi progression.
Mm-hmm. who would you like to fight most right now? And I'm not looking past the No Gi Worlds, but aside from that, upcoming competition is very important. Is there anyone on your radar that you
Yeah,
would love to fight or
I have
rematch?
I have some dream matches that I would love. Just some matches that never played out in the tournaments, but like I would love. I know there's like I mean at this point everyone like I can't even say my name. Everyone will just call me out. But I don't even pay. I try not to even pay attention to that stuff. But there's some solid matches. I think at my weight class that I would like to do. Some of the champions. I forgot his name, but you'll know it. It starts with a T. It's the Japanese athlete, Tomo.
I forget who you're
I can't
talking
pronounce it.
about, but yes, I think I know who you're. I think I know who you're
Yeah,
talking about.
he's been around forever.
Hear his
He's
name.
won No Gi World. Yeah, he's a really crafty player. It's something I would love that fight. That'd be an amazing fight for me. Um, as far as like people besides like No Gi Worlds, I mean, I'm open to fighting anyone who I feel is good. If it's outside of competition, my only like I only want to do what's best for my career. I mean, my career is best for me to fight other champions, right? So it's like if they're roosterweight champions or they're light feather champions or previous champions, just I'm interested in those type of fights, like the fights that like, oh, okay, that dude's a champion, that's a champion, because it makes me so hungry to go and fight and compete versus like just fighting some of the up and comers who maybe they just they're famous, but they're not like they're not really like the accolades aren't there, and I take all the risk and everything like this. Like I'd rather have it be like where both risks is on the table and we're really fighting hard to like do that. I don't have exact names because honestly, I'm at a. It's funny. I was gonna make a post about this. I'm at a place where like, man, I gotta tell you, man, I'm in a place where I'm fighting from a love and abundance place. So like, I really don't pay attention to talking shit. I don't really believe that that's the way I have to be. I want to be myself, and myself is just a hard worker. So I'm open to fighting, names that make sense for me in the game. As far as going up in weight class, I want to do it, but also it's a lot of weight, like, and people like always like, oh, why don't you just fight this person? It's like, dude, like that's like 30-pound difference,
Yeah.
like it makes a difference, especially when a lot of these guys are on steroids, right? Um, I still think I'll take some chances after, but for sure there's going to be a lot more super fight opportunities with my manager in the next year. It's going to be like a lot more. We're just going to focus more on that. Um, but yeah, I have no like solid names because honestly, I just focus on the competitions, and in the competitions, I'm fighting all the guys that I would fight in super fights anyway.
Mhm.
So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I definitely I can't pronounce his name, so I don't want to butcher it. Um, him for sure. There's a couple other rooster weights that are kind of like in the middle between rooster and light feather that I would like to fight that have fought recently. Um, I had a list. I have a list somewhere that is like some really really dope fighters that I think they're younger, they're fucking dope, and they have cool styles. I mean things like that. But we'll see. There's no shortage of fights for me. I feel like uh, I just stay quiet while people talk in the background. There's no reason for me to get sidetracked from the goals and what I'm doing. But I'm definitely open to a lot of fights. I just don't really sit down and like hardcore like look it and like oh like like I'm not bleeding for fights. Like I there's abundance of fights, so like we'll get some cool ones in. 145 after hopefully God willing I'm able to win No Gi Worlds again.
Nice. Let's shift gears. We've talked a lot about competition. Let's talk about your footlock, the Junny Lock. Can you
Yeah.
explain to us in your words what is the Junny Lock?
So the Junny Lock at its core is inside heel hook that raises underneath the thigh and acts as a wedge underneath the thigh that would replace what would be a knee underneath it in the traditional saddle, and elevates that leg and that hip, and you're able to isolate a heel and get a break in the knee from that position. Essentially is what it is. So anything that like I'm able to have my foot or thigh underneath your hip and able to have my feet pretty much on your hip line or isolating your other hip line and going for it is a Junny Lock, right? And I've developed that game so hard, that move so hard, and really developed it, and even coming up with newer variations with my professor. So I'm excited to hopefully debut some of the newer variations, since everyone is pretty much not even trying to reap me these days.
Yeah. So is that move, would you say that like, is it, I've only seen it from a situation where your partner is reaping you. Is there other situations where you can hit this move?
Yeah, for sure. There's so many situations. So many situations. So it's looked at like a counter, right?
Yeah.
But it's only looked like as a counter because everyone usually only knows the first part. If you ever go and look at the system I created for it, which is a really good system, it's all around. I can hit it from everywhere. I can do De La Hiva Junny Lock. I can do waiter sweep Junny Lock. I can do stepping in your open guard Junny Lock. I can do it from so many places that it's unbelievable, especially double pull. And I can translate that Junny Lock to saddle, to 70-30, to Z-locks, right? All those intertwine along with the move. And I have so much I didn't put in the instructional so that I can give people leeway to play. But for the most part, you can use that very offensive. I use it very offensively. I probably use it offensively to the point where everyone's so used to it for me for a longer period of time than what they knew when it came out. So you got people not even reaping me in competition anymore. Like they're just going to reap me and taking their leg right back out. And painfully, I cry. But it's a good check. It just makes you, check, and as you do these moves and you develop these moves, I also know where I'm safe and where I'm not, because I've been doing it so long that I put myself in bad positions and I've got caught with my own move. You know what I mean? So like when you're developing these new techniques and these new concepts, if you're not willing to test them and see where it's going to fail, where it's not going to fail, then you don't really know. But for me, I kind of know where I'm safe, where I'm not safe. And it's a really good check on people, because what happens is people don't realize this, but it's a mental thing. Because for 10, 15 years, 20 years, you've been taught to reap, right? So I am going off the basis too that even if you know what's coming, your reaction still might be to reap.
Yeah.
Because in a high-paced match, that's what you're taught, right? Where I reap, but I don't reap when I fight anymore. I reap a certain way that keeps me safe, but I also play a very 70-30 heel hook game. I don't stay locked into just like standard leg entanglements, because I like to be able to move. And that's what keeps me a little bit more safe. But a lot of people don't do that. They just reap right away. And I see it in every competition. And the people who go for it, like Maisa, Pato, myself, PJ Barsh, they end up getting it because the person is just like, they're geared towards doing that. It's hard to unwind that.
How did you discover this move?
So I used to do this one counter with a heel hook, and I used to leave my knee in it. It used to get like popped, and used to get my foot popped. And I was like, oh man, I got to find a way that makes this work. How can I do this that is going to work in a structured way that's not going to rely on flexibility, that anyone can do? And as I kept playing with this move, like through a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of pops, I started figuring out that like, oh no, I could use my own leg that's being attacked to counter them. And then from there, it started just off as the counter, right? But then after that, it started off like, oh no, I can add this back take to it. Oh, I could add this other move into it. Oh, I could hit it from here now too, right? And then I started realizing the more I did that, the more they didn't realize like it was coming from one area or the other. And little by little, because when I do any of these techniques, I practice against the best in the world and make sure it works at a high level, at a low level, everything. And it just seemed to be working really well. And before I put it out, I wanted to make sure I covered all bases. And so I made a full system on it, and it's very effective, man. It's not a gimmick. It's not like a fake thing. I can tell you that like 90% of people mess it up. They just mess it up. They see what it looks like and they kind of try to emulate it, but because they don't know and feel the structure of how I'm doing it, it becomes not as effective as opposed to the people who, one, I've taught it to or were in the room with me, or three, like I go to a seminar and I teach it and it's completely different than what they thought. Like they think it's like, oh, this one thing, but it's not. It's like this way more tension based area. And so now it evolved from there, where I realized that my Junny Lock is more than just one move. It's a system, but also it's more dangerous in certain areas, especially when you're playing in points tournaments where they keep base. So like now I can hit it in areas where maybe my shin comes out the hip line and it goes to the other hip line, but I use the hip underneath the thigh to get the breaking power. So there's a lot of little things, and I think I'll update that on Sub Meta. Go get my Junny Lock on Sub Meta. But it's honestly an honor to have my move made and then be used by so many good people. Like it's flattering to me that people are out there using it. Some people just use the basic version. Some people use the full thing. Some people don't. But it's very, very flattering. And you know, like I find myself to be like an innovator, always creative, always trying to figure out how can I make this work in a way that is creative, still effective, and I won't break my body. You know, but this was one of the moves that was the most dangerous ones because the troubleshooting for it was just dangerous, man. Like there's so much troubleshooting where I had to like tap like 20 times in like a round just to figure it out, you know? So I'd say it was a lot of taps before I started getting offensive with it. But now it's like a thing. Like I'm pretty good about like if you ever roll in the room or see me, competition, it's a little harder because we're worried about points and stuff like this, but there's a lot of moments where I'll throw my leg purposely in the middle and I'll still make you read me without you wanting to read me, or you'll know it's coming and I still get it. So it's just one of those things, but also it works really well now that when you want somebody to reap you, they just take that little foot right back out and then you're back to being safe again. So, you know, got to be mindful.
Yeah. Does this move need to be applied with haste? Like, does it have to be quickly snapped on to work at the highest levels? Or is it one of those things where once you get your controls, it can be applied slowly?
Yeah, no, if you get your controls, it can be applied slowly. What it really depends on is the person and how committed they are to the move.
To the reap,
you
mean?
So
oh,
like
to learning
to the reap.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, no, the reap. Like let's say you go to reap me. If you're committed to that reap, then yeah, I'll take my time because I know you're committed to that footlock. You're like, I'm gonna catch him. This is apparent in my quarterfinal at Worlds 2022, and this is apparent in my Europeans quarterfinal where the guy was losing. He was fully committed to reaping me, and because of that, I had time to just grab it. Right, where you might have with somebody who's been through it once and they're going to spin fast, and because they spin fast, you're going to have a little bit less time and you're going to have to worry about some variables, right? Or you can be more seasoned. Like right now you only see it where I do the footlock and I do the Junny Lock and I don't put my other hook in to block the hip line. But as now when I fight with a lot of people, I use the other leg, the free bottom leg. Instead of doing a back take, I'll throw it in, keep my knee pointed to the ground, and I'll control your hip. So I have one hook on side, one hook on the other side, and then I rotate and catch. That's a much slower version of it where I can control your hip line. So it really is dependent on the person. But if for sure, you do have to be careful because I've been in the room and people, I'm countering and they're just fucking freaking out and just spinning hard. And the last thing you want to do is stay still when they do that. You just got to spin with them and just make sure your leg's safe. I also use this motion for a sweeping motion, right? Like just doing it, sweep, boom, take the foot out and come up. So there's a lot of play on it, but for sure you can do it fast or slow, but it would really depend on the person and how committed they are to that heel hook. Yeah, for sure.
So I got two questions for you here. Number one, how is somebody supposed to, I don't know if you want to answer this. How does somebody reap you and stay safe? Because you had mentioned there's kind of a particular way that, that you can apply a reap while staying safe.
Yeah.
And how do you stay safe while you're in a reap and you're looking to apply a submission? I know those are big questions, right?
So I can't personally say that on the podcast because they'll just like fuck with everybody on my game. But there is a way, and this is the reason why I haven't shown this online too, is because there's a way that I reap that is much safer, not sporadic, and it just involves making sure that your hands are occupied doing something while I go for it.
Okay.
But it also, there's a couple little details that need to be said, but there's a way to do it for sure. There's always a way to do something correct, even if you know the move is there. Now, you can reap me. I still get reaped all the time. A lot of the times they just got to be worried a little bit that I don't catch the other stuff, because if somebody's okay at it, I'm really good at it. Like I'm pretty good at like hitting my own move. Like I do it like in such like it's second nature to me. Like I don't really think about it. So like if it's time to go, I go. You just got to be mindful. I'd say at this point in day and age, you got to be mindful that that's there. Most people don't do it correct, so people get away with it. But the people that do get it correct, they think twice before they do.
Yeah.
Right.
So you're already mentally getting
mean
an
that
edge over them.
Yeah, that doesn't mean to say that you'll never be able to reap somebody. That's a lie, right? Like that's a lie. Of course you will, but with the Junny Lock, you're gonna check them. You're at least gonna check them, and then like they'll be worried. Now, leg lock battles are leg lock battles, so like you can never just be like, oh, I'm gonna do this leg lock battle. I'm gonna win the exchange. Like, no, there's a fight. All right, I go for your feet. My feet are exposed. Like there's just the trade off that is there. But for sure, you can still reap. There's a safe way to reap. Unfortunately, I cannot give that on to you to the podcast. We'll wait till after No Gi Worlds, and then
we can get your
throw
secrets.
that out there. Yeah.
So can you tell us how you this is kind of the same question, right? Like how can you stand in a reap and attack the Junny Lock while, I'm not going to say ignoring the reap because that's foolish, but like to just stay safe in the pocket as you're going for offense?
So I always tell people, safety is number one thing when you come to the Junny Lock. Now, I'm me, so I might take more chances than other people, right? I might go for it while you try to rip a toe hold. Might go for it, but I've been there before. I know. I have a feel when I'm safe. The best thing I always tell people out is if your knee line is in between the legs and the groin, don't do the Junny Lock.
So if they have your knee
like
line,
if you have if my knee's trapped, I'm not going to do the Junny Lock. It's too dangerous. Like you can do it, but the risk is high, right? Like if a guy knows what he's doing in the outside, double outside heel hook or the regular outside heel hook, you're gonna chance it a little bit, right? But if your knee line's free, and I always say this, the way you do the Junny Lock is you pull your shin and the foot to the hip line while you're escaping. So on your escape, it already comes into play. You just got to leave the hook and the shin tensioned up while you reach for it. So you should always be safety with your knee line free, attack. If the knee line's not there, I'm defending, right? And that's a very important thing to remember. Like you're doing this, but you're trying to be safe with it. You're also doing a calculated risk. So like the biggest thing is this is where I say like it's not a gimmick move. It's based off structure, and because it's based off structure, the simplest thing to do is to make sure you follow the rules. Like I'm not gonna jeopardize my own leg in certain things. Like I have done before, and I'm pretty good at getting it, which is why I got away with it. But I would not do that 10 times out of 10. You know what I mean? It'd be like 2 out of 10. Otherwise, I'm going to make sure my knee's safe, catch the heel hook. If I can't catch my own lock, then I go a back take or escape or something like this. Because there's a lot of variables. Like you could have the Junny Lock in, they triangle their legs. Well, my first option is to make sure my knee's free, break the triangle, and then re-attack for the Junny Lock, right? So there's variables, but you can stay safe doing it the right way. Now you have people in the moment, they just fucking rip it, but like it's not real. They may get a tap, but structure wise, it's not as real. My whole thing is based off structure. So like it's the same as you doing saddle. And that's a big important part to remember, is that like you have mechanics in saddle, right? You have something blocking the hip, you have a wedge on the inside of the knee, and then you have isolation of the ankle, right? The toe bone to the heel. It's the same thing for the Junny Lock. My shin and foot and instep is blocking your hip. My own hip is acting as a wedge underneath your knee. And then my forearms and or whatever configuration you want is isolating the ankle and toe bone. So with those motions, you exactly establish a braking mechanic for the knee that's actually structure based. And if you follow it like that, you'll have way more taps than just having it half-ass. Now, there's more updated versions of it that I've been working on that kind of break that rule a little bit, right? But it has the same concept. So we'll go from there. But I'm not releasing those until I fine-tune them a little bit more.
What's your favorite grip to use? Just standard heel hook grip?
You know, I used to love like a butterfly, like kind of like a gable, like a butterfly. But these days, I mean, I just like standard, or I like doing I catch the toes and my other hand just catch the heel,
Yeah.
which is like a power heel hook. That I love that one, like because like I just catch it. These days, it's so hard to catch the full wrist underneath the heel that I feel like if I catch this and I reach, I'm gonna get the same breaking power. So I'd rather do that. But for me, of course, like old school is better. Like me getting my wrist bone underneath the Achilles is my favorite. I'm a fond person of fundamentals when it comes to leg entanglements. So I don't do nothing crazy fancy, even if it looks fancy. It's just a lot of fundamentals done really, really well. And that's kind of where I go. I don't love to like go crazy with the grips, but for sure, like an outside heel hook, if I'm able to get a rear naked choke grip, it's going to be way better than a regular standard one. But I'm pretty good with just the standard one in general. But if I had my choice, I'd grab the heel and I'd kind of do like a modified inside heel hook. So that's my favorite one to do.
We'll wrap it up pretty quickly here. When's the last time you were in a leg entanglement and you were trying to do a Junny Lock and you got tapped out trying to do it?
I don't know. It was I mean,
during the move's infancy, like in its development stages.
Yeah, in the infancy stages, or like in the stages where I was in the room where I was like really tired and I was just doing dumb shit. Some people have caught me before. Pato's caught me before in my own move. Just because I just like reaped wildly and he caught it and we just laughed it off like it was hilarious. Because we trained together quite a bit. Maisa's caught me in it, playing around. We've both played around with it, just caught me in it. Murilo's caught me in it, obviously. A bunch of my students have caught me in it as well, like especially when I'm troubleshooting. But the last serious time, like when I was like really serious, probably never. It's very rare that I get caught in a leg entanglement. I'm pretty safe. I think my offensive skills are really good, but my defensive skills are higher, right? So like I feel like I'm an 8 to like let's say I'm a 7 to a 9 in my leg entanglements, which I feel are very deadly. I feel like my defense is like a 10, 11. Like I feel like I understand when I'm in jeopardy, how much I can take, and being mindful of defending early versus late. Like a lot of leg lockers who like sit in the pocket and like they let you get their leg while they get their leg, and then like I'm not that type of leg locker. Like that's just craziness. Like I'm not gonna do that. Like I think those people haven't had ACL surgery. They don't know what it's like.
Have you had your ACL done?
Yeah, I've had my ACL done. Yeah, so I know what it's like to. That's part of the reason why I got into leg locks was because I remember getting tapped out once in competition, and I remember having ACL, and I remember being afraid, and I was like, I never want to be afraid of this. Like I want to be able to, my legs have been through a lot throughout my, when I was younger, I was boat-legged, so I had to have the things on my legs to open them up, and then I had issues with my knee, with my ACL for 6 years, and I reconstructed that. That took for 2 years to do, which it's very hard to do. I don't care what anybody says. Like it's very hard to do. And then I had my meniscus taken out of my knee, and then I've also had a 3rd-degree lateral LCL tear, which means that my knee popped out the side and came back in. So like I've had my fair share of like what's going on. And this day and age, I train as hard as I can and smart and all this stuff, but I'm gonna make sure my legs stay intact. So. For sure, I still get hurt sometimes. You're in competition. Guy does a full-fledged toe hold on my leg. That doesn't mean I didn't feel it. It just means that like I got a decent amount of scar tissue that is gonna pop before my leg's gonna pop. But I'm also mindful of the position. Like I know when I'm in danger. I know when I'm in trouble, and I think I have good awareness of the foot locks. And I also don't have that bad etiquette just to leave my foot in a bad position just because I feel like I can fight it. Like I'm very big on keeping my feet in good positioning, because people will have this crazy thing like, oh, it's a foot lock. It's not real. It's craziness. Like, of course it's real. Like, you know, you just got to be careful when you do those things. But yeah, I mean, when I'm in the room, it's been very rare since that I've been tapped, but it happens. Like, to sit here and tell you it doesn't happen. Most of the time, if I'm serious, it won't. But it has happened. Like, you know, sometimes I'm fighting and going and they go to rip something and I'm not paying attention, or maybe I am and maybe it was just the calculation. But for sure, I think if anybody says that they don't get tapped out in the room trying their moves, I don't think they're training the right way. You know what I mean? Like, obviously you're going to get tapped sometimes, right? Yeah, I even myself, sometimes I'm training for a tournament like the week before, maybe one round that I was too light or I messed up on my calculation and I got tapped, you know, like, I just tap, and I try not to have too much ego with that anymore, you know, just we fix it. But in those interims of getting tapped, or the moments that I do find myself in a Junny Lock and I feel like something went wrong, I'll go back and learn my lesson from them. And I'll feel like, okay, I know what I got to do better for next time. And that's pretty much how that goes. But for sure, I've gotten it. It's been quite a bit, but for sure I've gotten it. I mean, when I train my professor Murilo, he's like a grandmaster. So like, anytime I roll with him, I'll do my Junny Locks and he's just so good. He just counters everything. It's just so crazy. And he catches me all the time. So it's pretty awesome to be humbled and put back down.
I'm going to ask one last question. I know you got to go if that's okay.
Yeah. No problem.
So,
no problem.
I'm inspired to start adding the Junny Lock to my game. Like I had mentioned, one of my friends, John Chan, he went to one of your seminars and he's like, man, Junny was hitting me with a Junny Lock every time I reaped him. It was super cool. And I'm, you know, it's not a move that I would say is super common yet in the current jiu-jitsu meta. Like it's almost underappreciated. Like it's overlooked. It's not considered like one of the core, you know, core techniques that people use yet. And so I'm looking to incorporate this move into my game. I consider myself like I'm a competent leg locker. And what are some things that you would recommend for people like me, like not beginners in leg locks, but like competent leg lockers? They want to add this technique to their game. What are some tips or things to think about as you're going through the training process and incorporating the Junny Lock into their game?
I think that if you're a competent leg locker, which is the best, because I always tell this to people, like, you can learn it as a newbie, but it is best for it's definitely an advanced move. It's not you can learn it as a white belt if you're sufficient in leg entanglements, for sure, or you're whatever skill level you are. But I would say that you should at least be competent. That's the perfect word for it. I would say that when you do it, practice slow, practice in the ground first, like double pull, where you're both on the ground, where gravity doesn't play a factor, so that when you get there, if you mess up or something happens, it's not going to cost you your leg, versus like when you do it from the top, because there's so much torque and there's so much, you know, little details of like gravity, you know, you're more jeopardy. So the way I teach it, I like to teach people on the ground first. And then I progress to like single leg X and just have the person rep and kind of just get the rep and the idea of pulling your shin and your foot to the hip line and get that motion of pulling and escaping, but then staying in the pocket enough to reattack. I think that that's more important than actually hitting the move. Like, being able to do that will easily, that's like 90% of the move. And then from there, it's just making sure you have little things of isolation. But I would say that basic on the ground first, then on top, and then if you really feel good with it, then you can start applying it from funky positions like the De La Hiva and stuff like this, where I feel like if you can't get down the first move, like the first counter, then you shouldn't be doing it, right? Like, you shouldn't progress to something else. For me, I always make sure that my students know how to do it on the ground first, and then I start adding it in. And that's what I would say. I'd say, you know, if you watch it online, right? And there's a free thing online for it. You don't have to get the instructional, so it is free on YouTube. It's not as detailed, but It's detailed enough where if you look at it, you'll see how my shin is pulling to the inside of the hip. And you know how you're on do single leg X when you're on the ground and the person moves away from you, but you're attached to his hip, so you move with him. This should be the same concept. So like when you do your shin on the inside of the hip and you're escaping, when you go to pull him, his whole body should move. That's how tight you should be inside of it. Like it should be a connection, not just like a loose leg. So you're always constantly contracting. If you can get that down along with the timing of when to catch the leg and all this other stuff, that'll be like bread and butter. And then I would always say in the beginning, it starts off as just a counter. Like you're just going to do it as a counter. You would bait people to reap you and you practice escaping in the counter and catching. That'd be my advice to you. Then from there, you can start to be more proactive about doing it. Like I personally can do it in a lot of areas where like if I see it, I'm going to go for it. Right. Like, but you know, I'm more meticulous now these days because every single person is just trying to like wait till I do it. And so like I literally have been in competitions this year where people are like, do the outside heel hook. Okay. And as soon as I go, they take their leg right back out and they just run.
Yeah.
So, you know, once people know, they know, and you got to come out with the more advanced ways to do it.
Yeah. And that's kind of what we do in this sport, right? It's like an arms race. You do a move, they learn the counter, then you do the counter to the counter, and it just keeps organically growing, right?
It's like when you're teaching your students, you're like, oh, okay, this is how you do this. This is what I've been doing to you forever. They get way better. It gets harder for you to pass.
Yeah.
And then you got to figure out better ways to pass. Or like, you know, like I remember I spent the whole year half a year teaching my students the guard retention that I do, right? Along with leg entanglements and stuff. I can't tell you, but like it got 50% harder.
Yes.
Like it's so much better, but it's also so much better because it's like, oh, we're fighting now. Like it's nice to see them, especially my upper belts, like understand like, oh, this is what you're doing. Oh, this is what you're doing. And now all the guard retention is like really on point and makes it more on point and more sufficient for me to have to pass the right way. Yeah.
Of course. Well, I really appreciate your time, especially I know you're busy right now, and I want to wish you the best of luck at No Gi Worlds. I think you're going to do awesome, and congratulations on all your recent success. And thank you for what you've done for jiu-jitsu, because it's awesome to see guys who contribute by, you know, coming up with a technique that no one's ever seen before. And it's pretty cool to have a name named after you. So I'm definitely going to do a deep dive into the Junny Lock. I got to add this to my game.
Yeah, for sure. I think at some point it'll be a standard thing that's there.
Yeah.
And I think that it'll evolve it a little bit.
Awesome. Where can we find you? Where can we find your products?
So the best place to find me, you'll find me a bunch of places. If you go on TikTok though, I don't run my TikTok. My girlfriend runs my TikTok, so you'll just be talking to her the whole time. If it is, you can reach me through my email, which is all located on my IG. IG is the best form to reach me. Either that or email. Those are the best options. And the email is located on my IG. And if you need any, all my instructionals are on BJJ Fanatics. The Junny Lock is exclusively on Submeta. So if you want that one, you have to go to Submeta, get it. It goes on sale periodically. And on YouTube, I haven't uploaded too much lately, but the stuff I do have up there is very high level, very basic fundamentals of jiu-jitsu. So, and those are always free. And I'll periodically be putting rounds and free rounds and content on there. And of course, Instagram's the best way to find me.
Awesome. All right. Thank you so much for joining us, Junny. And guys, if you want to support the show, check out the links on the bottom. Remember, the Everyday Jiu-Jitsu podcast is everything you need to know about jiu-jitsu. Take care.